Can you help me out here? Oh, yeah, I can. I wish he'd call me back. But listen carefully to this segment. It's important.
Okay, so as you're looking at the information, I just put this map up. When you're looking at a site and you see all the different nodules that are tying in, each one of those have an individual address and an individual IP address, MAC address, and an individual identifier. So when, for example, when they're talking about the hammer and scorecard information from...
Now listen. James Comey, according to General McInerney, sold Hammer Scorecard to China for personal gain. Listen here. Listen.
Dennis Montgomery, and they were showing the traffic back and forth. You can see the Chinese telecom companies and all of that. Well, let me show you why that's important. So, and let me bring this up here.
Listen carefully. James Comey was FBI Director of Connecticut. He ran the Hartford office. He was hired by Ray Dalio and then paid about $13 million in all to go down for the Hillary Clinton investigation sent by Richard Blumenthal and Jim Himes and DHS Subcommittee Chair Chris Murphy. Listen carefully.
Here is why that piece of information is important, okay? On the screen,
listen.
The docs that I did on a gentleman by the name of Andy Huang. He is the core infrastructure manager of IT of Dominion Voting. He also worked for China Telecom from 1998 to 2002, and he owns a shell company called Oriental Net Consulting. So here we have a guy who was trained by the CCP. He worked for China Telecom, and he is the core infrastructure manager of IT for Dominion Voting. So now when you go back and you look at the Hammer and Scorecard IP addresses of where those points of attack were coming from, a majority of them are coming out of China Telecom. And in a lot...
China Telecom. So, James Comey of Westport, Connecticut, sold Hammer Scorecard to China, and China Telecom is involved up to its eyeballs in hacking towns in the United States.
A lot of the explanations, they talk about how Hammer went from being in one location, which was in Fort Washington, and then now all of a sudden there were three that were created. There's one in Fort Washington, there's one in China, and then there was the one that was run in Italy, I believe, or I don't remember if they specified Italy or if it was Spain or Germany. But all of those pieces and components tie in because we have people within the company themselves that are tied back into the CCP. And as we go further into...
Who's tied to the CCP?
We've got Oriental Net, which is manufacturing and making paper products. Now, why is that piece important?
Dominion Drive, Fort Washington, Maryland.
Oriental Net Consulting. All of a sudden, one of my affidavits, there's a picture of a lady holding up a box, and that box says SF Airlines. It's got a big S and an F with a circle around it. SF Airlines is a Chinese shipping company that just barely got allowed to ship goods into the U.S. by aircraft. So we had Atlanta, we had Arizona, we had Pennsylvania, where they were flying in ballots.
That's okay. That was the $1 million question to ask you. What paper were these people producing? And it was election ballots. And I saw some images of the packaging that you're referring to. But folks, we're talking about certain ballots that perhaps could be printed in a way, perhaps that could they have alignment issues, or am I just speculating on something? Am I making something up? But could they be printed in a way where they would be kicked into adjudication for someone else to derive the intent of the voter?
Yes, on the bottom of the ballots themselves, and I'm going to see if I can bring this up for you. Dominion creates an alignment requirement within their own documents.
Jeez Louise.
So down in the bottom corner, if you look at a ballot, there is a circle with crosshairs on it. Now, if the alignment of the machine that makes it is off and those crosshairs are off, it immediately goes for adjudication.
So what they did was they had their CTCL staff positioned. Zuckerberg paid them. The guys in Norwalk confronted me, knew who I was, and physically kept me from voting, folks. It's not cool, because when I went to inspect the ballots, I wasn't on it. I wasn't supposed to know, because Ted Bromley, Director of Elections, covered it up. And guess who else is involved? Mark Kohler. Now, I sent Mark Kohler an email today. It came back undeliverable. His email address no longer works. Ada Karini's email address no longer works. Tim Holtzman email address no longer works. It's alarming. Taffy Womack's email address no longer works. Stephanie Thomas's, the current Secretary of State, and Denise Merrill's email address no longer work. What's happening now is they're not answering the phone as they are being fired. So, not only did James Comey from Connecticut sell Hammer Scorecard, but Richard Blumenthal sent him down for the Hillary Clinton email investigation. The Clinton Foundation is an investor in the hacking software companies, and they had a prearranged arrangement that Hillary was supposed to win, but they failed. They failed in 2016. They succeeded in 2020. And this is what Adam Schiff is doing. But when you look at why the FBI has been corrupted, it's obviously because James Comey brought in CCP involvement, and Richard Blumenthal owns partnerships in China. He owns 2 malls in Shanghai. One is 562,000 square feet, folks. He owns the Empire State Building with his wife and other partners. Let me tell you, he owns 40 strip malls. He employs 300 Chinese nationals just at his hotels in Shanghai. So, the pieces of the puzzle that these guys are not talking about can be answered, will be answered, and are put into the Connecticut lawsuit. And I am sending these emails, these videos that I am making to various people who are in the know and are obviously connected to the problem. Okay? There are people who I can't prove are involved up to their eyeballs. And there are 2 people I would like to implicate that I am about to work on, which are critical. And I am getting help. And I was never getting help till recently. It's coming. I'm getting 200 emails a day about it. So I would suggest that what I'm getting is needed, and it's divine intervention. Thank you very much, folks.